Hi and welcome back to my channel for another episode about toy soldiers. Today I want to discuss with you something interesting that I have come across in some recent purchases of older Britain's figures. The subject is the word Deposé. What is that, you ask? In the French language, the word Deposé is derived from the verb déposer, which means to file or register something in the bureaucratic sense. So in a very simple sense, the word déposé means registered. So you ask, what does this have to do with my collection? Well, in the past I purchased a number of older Britons from other dealers, notably Andy Morant of London, but also a gentleman by the name of Joe Wallace of Arlington, Virginia. As some of you may know, Mr. Wallace is also a well-known author and authority on toy soldiers, and the author of several books on the history of Britain's figures and numerous articles related to old toy soldiers. I don't have all his books yet, but if you collect Britons, or you plan to do so, I strongly recommend purchasing his books, either directly from him or through second-hand sources. According to Opie, and I hope I get this right instead of muddying the waters, between 1905 to 1923, Britons operated an outlet or office in Paris, France, through which figures were sold, and circa 1912, a factory was established in Paris to produce its figures. Now, I won't get into what was made or the operations of the Paris office. Suffice to say that while Britons operated in France, the French government of the day, and here we're talking about pre- and post-World War I, imposed a requirement resulting in the word Deposé be incorporated on Britain's figures. From what I can understand, Britain's figures, either manufactured in England and exported to France, or later produced in France by the Britain's factory, incorporated the word Deposé in the base of the figure. As Opie writes, when the Paris office ceased operations, the Deposé molds used for these figures were repurposed back in England because they still had utility for other Britain's figures. I mean, why get rid of them if they were still of use and certainly of value? As such, the word Deposé continued to appear in production lines that were manufactured in England, but not solely for export to France. Are you confused by now? Because I sure am. In my short time collecting, I've had the fortune of purchasing a number of figures stamped Deposé, and while the provenance is unknown, these figures came to me through Andy Morant or Joe Wallace's inventories. My first experience is with a collection of 8 figures of Britons, set number 1633, Canadian Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry, that I purchased from Mr. Wallace around 2020. When the figures arrived, I noticed the additional wording on the base bottom. Though just legible with a magnifier was the word O-S-E, Osé, on each figure. In 2021, I purchased 2 lots of set number 1633, again the Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry, from Andy Morant. When I examined them, they also were embossed with either the word Deposé or Osé, O-S-E. Given that the Princess Pat figures were produced from 1938 to 1966, I'm pretty sure this is a case of old Deposé molds being repurposed to complete the Princess Pats at some time during the production. Since I can never determine the provenance of the Wallace and Morant figures, I'll never know the path they took from the original point of sale to me. Additional information on the base bottom of all the Princess Pat figures was Britons Limited, Proprietors, Copyright, but no mention of England on the bases. Later in 2021, I purchased a partial set of Britons number 207, Royal Navy officers from Andy Morant. Well, lo and behold, these figures were also found to have the word Deposé incorporated on the figure bases. Now, I should add, in case you're wondering, they also had the wording Britons Limited, proprietors, copyright, but again, no reference to England. Given that the production run for number 207 was 1920 to 1941, I suppose there is just a slight chance that these were originally produced and déposed for the French market. But there's also a greater chance that it was another case of old molds, new figures. And to top things off, I was looking at some of my Britain's number 1634 Canadian Governor General's foot guards, and several of them also are having the Deposé stamp on the bottom of the bases. Now, I can't see from all of them if that's the case because they're so heavily painted. The paint that ran off when I guess they were originally done at the Britain's factory. But at least two of them, it's clearly there. And so there's another twist to this tale. All in all, the presence of the word Deposé on my figures does not confer any further value to the collection. If anything at all, it just makes for interesting conversations and certainly reinforces the quirks of Britain's production history, particularly with respect to its Paris office period. But let Opie have the final word on this. Quote, while all Paris office figures would have Deposé on them, by no means all figures with Deposé are Paris office. Unquote. Thank you again for watching. I hope you enjoyed this offbeat discussion, and if you like what you saw, hit the like or subscribe buttons. Until next time.